welcome aboard, whether you've got here by accident or on purpose, where you've been kidnapped and held for hostage or merely just hatched. You're at the site of Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we help people explode into their lives through full impact mindfulness. If you're welcome nowhere else, you're welcome here. The only admission price is the honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to try. Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist, and as always, and as advertised, we have for an eclectic group of guests. And today, I'm joined by one of my newer found friends, Miss Gloria. Gloria, if you were kidnapped by aliens and they knew nothing about the human race or Gloria, how would you represent yourself? What would you say about yourself?
Wow, that's a fun question. Well, my name is Gloria Rodriguez-Ransom. I am originally from Puerto Rico, and I am a mental health therapist to all, but I do have a specialty, or I enjoy and love working with Latino families since I speak Spanish and I can kind of help them in their own language.
Okay, so we're at this point in your life. However, there had to be somewhere where you started to get to here. So could you connect a little bit of the dots for us about the evolution of Gloria into where she's at today?
If I think correctly, I hated math in school, so I knew that accounting was not going to be it for me. But I loved listening to people, and everybody would come to me with like their problems. So I thought, hey, psychology sounds really good. I came to Pittsburgh in 1991, probably dating myself, and did my BA in psychology, and I loved it. I almost failed high school, but when I got to college, I loved all the classes, and I just did really well. And then I did my master's in counseling. I guess I also ended up staying in the city. I came to go to school, but I ended up meeting my husband, and 3 kids later, I'm still here.
Okay, so could you talk to us a little bit about growing up in Puerto Rico and the environment, the kitchen that you were cooked in?
Yeah, of course. It is always warm, which is a very big contrast with Pittsburgh. You always go to the beach on the weekends. You have big family gatherings. I had like 14 cousins and uncles and aunts and my grandparents' house. Um, it was always either a wedding or an event of celebrating. I think we always used any event just to go out to eat or make food or just sit around and drink coffee or adult beverages. So a lot of family, a lot of good food, a lot of outdoor activities.
Okay, well, it sounds like there was a lot of a meshment in a family process there. So, could you tell us a little bit about how a young lady from Puerto Rico ends up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania?
Going to college in Puerto Rico, being a Commonwealth of the United States, it's easier. It's one of the things the only Latin population that is U.S. citizen. So a lot of people from Puerto Rico come out to the United States to get their higher education. And so I did. I graduated high school and came to Pittsburgh. Actually, I was supposed to go to Boca Raton. And my uncle, Tio Papo, I'll never forget, he said, if you go to Boca Raton, you're going to party. If you go to Pittsburgh, you'll be freezing and stay inside and study.
You'll stay inside and party.
Well, and I was going to say, yep. I still partied inside, but I did come to Pittsburgh and saw snow for the first time. I remember my college, classmates, come outside and all that new stuff.
So you mentioned earlier about to be kind. It sounded like high school was a little challenging.
I just didn't like it. I mean, in high school, I think you take a lot of, and I think a lot of kids struggle with high school. You take so many subjects that are not of interest to you. And then you're stuck in this curriculum that, you're taught at, not necessarily engaged in education. So, yeah, I struggled with attention and homework, and that was just not, I'm such a social person. I just wanted to be engaged in social things and talking to people. I'd get in trouble for talking and doing all kinds of stuff. So,
So you
yeah,
mentioned being talked at.
yes.
And one of the things that at Namaste, where we try to do is I guess at least one of my missions, I believe, is that unfortunately young ladies begin to lose their self-concept and self-esteem around the age of 9 years old. And what we try to do is to help young ladies in particular, and of course young men, understand that they have choices and understand that they do have a voice. Could you tell us a little bit about your own development in that area?
I am very social. I love music. I love art and just socializing. So I don't think I had an issue in regards to having my voice being heard. Um, I do know that I think I have a very outgoing template um, and temperament. Um, but I do, I guess when you're finding your identity from like the age of 9, um, I did feel like I was empowered and encouraged to be assertive. And I mean, my dad would have us learn how to drive a stick. Even as a girl, like you have to drive a stick. If there's an emergency and the only car that's there is stick, then you have to be able to drive it, change a tire. Um, for the Latino culture, which sometimes can be very machista, my dad was one that he taught all 4 of us, my 2 brothers and my sister and I, to be independent and be able to speak your mind and all that.
So
So
it sounds like your father modeled behavior for you and your siblings.
yes,
Tell us
definitely.
about your dad.
Huh? He was a hood. He was in the military, so a lot of his punishments were a little radical. Definitely always had positive intent. His delivery was a little harsh. Corporal punishment, definitely. In the Latino community, we talk about the belt.
Okay.
We talk about, the chancleta, which is the
Chancleta?
chancleta is flip flops.
Okay.
So I think as a teenager, I really resented him and just wanted to get out and just, be on my own and do it all on my own, which you never know what that means at that age. But as a young woman who I am today, I can look back and say that I appreciate a lot of the messages that he wanted to instill.
Okay. Did you feel like you were listened to?
Not all the time.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So at times, Gloria, what we talk about is what I call core emotional concerns or human bill of rights, and that's to be understood, to be listened to be treated as an equal, to be heard, to be given the benefit of the doubt, and to be given the freedom to decide. So at what point in your life did you feel that you were all of those things encapsulated for you?
I think as a young woman, as a young adult, after I came to go to college, and I was independent over here because I was by myself over here. Although, my parents were in Puerto Rico and would visit, or I'd go home for the summer. But I think once I got married and I guess became independent from my core family unit, um, because they did not always see things the way I saw
Well,
them.
imagine that.
Yeah, no.
So could you tell us a little bit about the cultural shift from Puerto Rico and your family unit there to being on navigating here in Pittsburgh?
in Pittsburgh. It was rough. It was rough. I do have to say, and you ask about identity, and I think here in Pittsburgh, it was a very a shock in regards to identity because I had not questioned who I was or where I was from until then. And then when I came here to go to school, there were people from different races, different colors, but I did not fit in either one. Um, so as a Latina, I was too light skinned for black people, but too dark for white. Like it just, you don't blend in or you don't kind of go in either, or you can actually go in both. I, as social as I am, I had friends and especially international students from Bosnia and Serbia, but you definitely start noticing that there's other people in the world and um, that have different cultures and different values and different foods and different coffee. And it was very eye opening.
So, quite often, what we do is when we encounter individuals that we're attempting to assist that feel awkward, that they don't feel that they fit in, they don't feel part of.
Hmm.
And for some people, this extends throughout their life. And sometimes what we try to explain to them, it's not that they don't fit in with them, they don't fit in with you.
Hmm.
So talk about finding your gang. Talk about finding, as our equine therapist said, finding your herd.
I think you start building that identity as a Latina. Actually, I will have to say that I was always Puerto Rican, and I'm still Puerto Rican. I, I will always be from Puerto Rico and Puerto Rican, and I led. You asked me, you know, I'm Gloria, originally from Puerto Rico. This is like um, where I identify. But when I came to Pittsburgh, I became Latina. You become part of this bigger family, or you embrace um, a bigger part of a group.
So could you perhaps explain and educate our audience on where you come from and how you're viewed as a culture? Like some people say Hispanic, some people say Latina. Could you help us differentiate?
So Latin America is built by many Latin countries that I guess when Christopher Columbus came over here from Spain and quote unquote conquered or discovered, let's say, and then brought Africans to work in um, slavery. There was the mix of the three races. There was the native Indian. In Puerto Rico, specifically, we have Tainos, Spanish, and then African from different parts of Africa and dialects. So there's the blend of those three cultures throughout Latin America in different countries. So Mexico and Argentina and I Puerto Rico is in the Caribbean, so off the coast of like Florida, and there's I want to say three. Most of like the predominantly one is Dominican Republic, Cuba, and Puerto Rico, but there's all kinds of Saint Martin, Saint Croix, and John. There's so many islands in the Caribbean, and then Latin America is also composed of Latin countries that speak Spanish, being that they were colonized by Spain. Now, in Brazil, which is also considered a Latin country, but they speak Portuguese because it was, you know, Portugal who actually colonized them. So there's a lot of history in the Latin country. We all, I could say, speak Spanish. We all have different dialects, and there's even from Guatemala. There are people who don't speak Spanish. They speak different dialects from their region. Um, so I think everybody in Latin America identifies as their own country. And when you're in Puerto Rico and you're Puerto Rican, you're just kind of living your life and just going about it. But when you step out of Puerto Rico, then you I guess, see yourself in the context of a different population. And that is, I think, in the United States, then we have these boxes that the government has tried to put us in, and then you qualify as Hispanic from Española from Spain or Latino from Latin America.
Could you help us? Could you help differentiate that, uh, particularly the boxes where you're trying to be put into?
So I always do put Hispanic. I guess Hispanic is from Española, from Spain, and Brazil would not fit in there because they're not from there. So that's why I think they might be um, more categorized as Latino. But the race piece is also one that is difficult because you may have to do one of those kits to really find out where you're really from, or if your race is black or white or Native American or
Okay.
Native.
So, of course, some parents fear their children are becoming acculturalized and getting away from their own cultural identity. How do you deal? How did you deal with that?
I think I've always been really grounded in my cultural identity. I do feel blessed that I am from Puerto Rico. Both my parents were from Puerto Rico. My grandfather was from Dominican Republic. I'm really proud of that, and love Dominican Republic, and my friends from Dominican Republic. But um, I think it's, you want to take both parts and find the culture and learn about the culture and be proud of whatever. If you're biracial or if you're triracial, you really want to find out um, what those pieces are that make you up. But you also don't want to just focus on that and be stuck on the perception of that, if that makes all the sense.
So, how
um
long did it take you to assimilate into, if there is such a term, as American culture and still continue to keep your identity as Latina?
um I have always, ever since I got here, we started promoting the Latino community. I've always performed salsa, cha-cha, merengue. I am a Zumba instructor, so I still dance to today. I've always taken an opportunity to educate others about Puerto Rican culture, as well as perform and dance. And I have to say that actually being here makes me reach more to that culture. When I had kids, my middle name is Josefina, and I never liked it. It's the female of, like, the female version of Jose. So I always hated it, like, growing up. But when I got here, it was something that I hung on to. It was something that was part of my culture, my personality, my so both my girls are named Josefina. I put it on both their birth certificates. It's just, I think you try to hold on to. I had to learn how to cook. I got tired of hamburgers and pasta. And I was like, I need rice and beans, and there was no restaurants to eat rice and beans the way that I make them. So I had to learn how to cook, and music has always been part of who I am, and going to dance or perform is just one of the ways that I stay connected to my culture.
So, the what we do is termed as the helping profession. Okay. So, tell us, after you graduated with your master's in clinical mental health counseling, where'd you go?
So I started working for CYF, Children and Youth Services. I worked for them for a year, and I realized I did love the kids, but as a case worker, you don't have a lot of opportunity to actually work with the family. You actually refer them, and somebody else works with them. I did a little bit of drug and alcohol and worked in a halfway house. Um, and I think I realized that maybe that wasn't the place for me. So I ended up doing wraparound. And I loved doing wraparound because I could really work with the families and meet them at home and see their environment and just try to figure out how I could support them. One thing that also happened at CYF is I was the only Latina there, the only one who spoke Spanish. So I always ended up working with the families who were Latino. So that kind of let um, my passion and my practice for working with families who are Latino.
So when we talk about diversity, we talk about being all inclusive. It's a fine thing when Caucasians can sit on the mountaintop, and I'm probably going to irritate people when I say this, that sit and say, well, everything's just fine. I have no problem getting services. I have no problem getting any of these things. So what's the deal? What's your problem? And I'm going to throw that word white privilege out there, but some people are delusional and they don't believe that it exists. However, it's certainly a real thing.
It definitely is, and it is hard to navigate the mental health system, even if you speak English, let alone not speaking English. It is difficult to navigate the mental health system if you have insurance, and you can call on the back of your card for a referral, depending on the insurance you have, let alone not having insurance. So I think the mental health system, and I have dealt with the mental health system personally with my own children. And it is difficult for me as a master's level LPC clinician. So the struggles that families go through in order to secure an appointment, to have a translator sometimes come with them, to get transportation, there's just so many barriers just to get to the appointment.
Well, when we talk about mental health stigma, and I make no apologies for this, or I have no secrets to hide. I'm in long-term recovery, as all my listeners know, from drug and alcohol addiction, and I'm firmly in the 12-step world. And in my time of troubles, I've been in a number of psychiatric hospitals. However, because I know that because I was a Caucasian male, my entry into these and the availability of all these services, even though I felt at the time that I was the victim and everything was so horrible for me, sitting back and realizing now that my accessibility to these things was much greater.
Yes. It took us, I think, 4 months to get a young man who I'm still working with into a residential facility due to having schizophrenia. And this took for mom, a lot of support in regards to mental health, in regards to social services, Casa San Jose. There was a team of people around DHS. There was a lot of people around this family trying to get somewhere to take him in. And this took in and out of Resolve, in and out of Western Psych, being discharged, not having insurance, all obviously became a barrier, because then who's going to pay that bill? But this young man was going to be a harm to himself and to others in the community. So he needed the treatment, and it took a long time. It took probably additional months that would have taken a white person a lot less.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.